Hey, all you Arizona lovers. This is the Finding Arizona podcast. I'm your host, Jose.
And I'm your producer, Brittany.
And here at Finding Arizona podcast, we collect the local stories of all entrepreneurs and from around the valley. So join us at findingarizonapodcast.com, where you can hear every episode and see it as well at
YouTube. Like, subscribe, and comment below who you want to see next on our show. And when you're ready to start your podcast, you found the right spot. Found House, your next podcast production company.
Now, let's get back to the show. Score big with SeatGeek. Whether it's concerts, sports, or live events, SeatGeek has you covered. Use code FindingArizona to get a fantastic $20 discount on your SeatGeek tickets. Catch your favorite live events hassle-free with extra savings. Visit SeatGeek.com and make every experience unforgettable. Welcome back, everybody, to the Finding Arizona podcast. I'm your host, Jose. As always, we bring in fantastic guests every week, and today is definitely no different. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd love to introduce Shelby here, who is also the managing partner of Zen Investing, and founder and managing partner of Diversified Future. Welcome, Shelby.
Good morning. Thank you so much, Jose, for having me. I'm looking forward to this discussion today.
Absolutely. So we were just talking a little bit off air, and we're already connecting the dots of like how we've crossed paths. But I'd love to just ask the question that we typically ask everyone when we do these discussions: is can you give us a little bit of your origin story and how this whole life that you've developed over the years came to be?
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up back east in Maine,
Oh,
so
nice.
from New England, yes. And didn't know what I wanted to be. It was, the 80s and early 90s, and it wasn't common for females to love math and science. It was newer, I should say, and it
Yeah.
wasn't encouraged as much.
Yeah.
So luckily, my uncle is a civil engineer.
Awesome.
And so I said, what should I do? I really like math and science. And back then, didn't even realize that at the time that was one of my passions. And,
Yeah.
I just didn't know what that meant. So he encouraged me to be a civil engineer. I enjoyed watching what he did. He was on Planning and Zoning Commission and just a lot of different things back in Salem, and um, encouraged me then to go to school to be an engineer. And so here I am, moved out here in 1993 to go to ASU and studied civil engineering and got my Bachelor of Science there. Um, and the rest is history. Loved it here. I will say, probably as we get into the conversation today, a lot of what I went through back then, though, as a female in this industry, was unique and challenging. There
For sure.
were, a lot of clients and people in meetings that didn't have the comfort level or respect maybe of
Mhm.
a female in that position. So it was definitely climbing a little bit of a hill, but was lucky to be surrounded by a lot of great people that I studied with, that I went to school with, and then was fortunate to get a job at CMX. It was a large engineering firm here in the Valley for a long time,
Yeah.
until the Great Recession, and worked my way up into partner before we closed, and um, always joked with everyone that I was going to leave land development, that when we closed, we laid so many people off that I was never going to get back into this world,
Mhm.
and that I would be a Walmart greeter was what I would always say before I did anything in development again. Said, I just want to say hello, smile at people, have a great day, and go home and not worry. And
Yeah.
that lasted for about 6 months. And then I started dabbling back in this field again,
Mhm.
and started helping some friends that started a firm out of that decline at CMX. And the rest is history. I ended up staying in engineering for probably 5 more years. And
Mhm.
then one of my largest clients, Empire Group of Companies, was trying to get me to come over to them. And after about a year, I agreed. And I love being in land development. I
Mhm.
respect all the fellow engineers, including EPS is one of my consultants. And so I do some consulting work, some of my own land development, but
Mhm.
for the most part, hire consultants now to handle all of that, just because it's a lot of work, and it's given me an opportunity to get out in the community and make a difference by finding that balance in my work life as well as in my personal life.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot that we can pull out at the threads of your story. I'd always like to go and ask these kinds of questions because for me, the storytelling I like to kind of introduce to people is beginning is always a good way to go about it because there's the roots of the tree that you sometimes don't really get to see as much, and that is one of where the most beauty comes out of, where there's this intricacy that you won't be able to see unless you actually dig it up and look at it firsthand. So I will ask because so I'm like you. I grew up a little bit on the East Coast and then moved back here to the West Coast. I'm Native American on my mother's side, so when we moved back here. I went to the reservation and then from the res down to here for ASU. And one of the particular things that I found very interesting growing up on the East Coast is just the vibrancy of nature and how we connect with our city life and natural life there. So I wanted to ask you this, was that something one, your uncle being so into the development part, I imagine that was something that kind of piqued your interest as a child, but also where was the love of nature and the love of like seeing this mm, human life and a natural life come together, a part of that world for you?
So at that time when I lived in Maine, it wasn't existent. I could not wait to get out of Maine, and um, I didn't connect very much with nature or outdoors.
Okay.
Um, and so coming to the city, I actually started at Syracuse University and then switched to ASU. And when I got to Arizona, I will say I was shocked because I've now come to appreciate the desert, but when I first got here, it wasn't green, it wasn't Maine, it wasn't the trees.
Yeah.
That's about the day I realized how much I loved the trees and the green and the nature. It was too late now. I had already left, but I grew up by a lake. I mean, on the ocean in Arcadia Park. I mean, all of that now, looking back, I travel back every year to do that. And so I'm still not an outdoors girl, but I appreciate the beauty as much as I appreciate the desert beauty too,
Yeah.
with the cactus and the mountains, the red rock, everything. So as I've gotten older and found a better balance in my life,
Hmm.
and that took me time. I think the recession really, for me, I know a lot of people in my field will disagree, but I think it was good. I
Yeah.
think that it forced me to stop. My kids were young at the time, and it forced me to start appreciating
Hmm.
my kids, my family, nature, the moments.
Yeah.
And I'm very thankful for that turn.
That's
And
great.
so, yeah.
And that's the other thing about, the things that we we least think about a lot of the times that when we're growing up, that is we take for granted, and when we leave the places that we grow up, or we leave the kind of our infancy era and moving into kind of our development and childhood and more of these like adult life, you start to look back and you're like, oh wait, that was something that I really appreciated, and I appreciate more now. And so I was in the similar boat. I was actually fortunate enough to visit a couple of times before actually moving out here, that I
Mm,
was very it wasn't until you're like, oh, the realization of like I might not be able to see the stuff that I'm so used to for a long period of time. It might be a while before I come back. So
right,
yeah.
exactly.
Um so you brought up the transition from, going from Syracuse to ASU, and I would love to ask, like, was there a particular reason why you transferred like that, or was there something in particular to help you come to the Arizona area?
Actually, it was my husband. He,
Oh,
yeah, we lost his mom when we were young. We were, gosh, I think I was 21 when she
okay.
passed, and he was a few years older than me, and he had family out here in Arizona, and
Yeah.
so being in a small town, everywhere we went, everyone asked how he was doing. How I mean, she was just. I mean, we named our daughter after his mom,
Oh,
so
that's sweet.
and so it was a nice change of pace
Hmm.
to come and have a fresh start, if you will,
Yeah.
and We tried 6 months apart. I stayed back there and then said, I still have a few years left. It makes sense just to make the change, and
Mhm.
looked for a good school out here for engineering, and it was ASU. So
That's awesome. That's really great.
yeah.
I mean, one of the things that I've always found particular is really cool to ask about because there's a lot of people who transition from, another city to here to kind of ask those stories because it's very particular for each person. For me
Mhm.
in my case, it was family as well and it was the fact that my grandparents were getting a little bit older and retirement was around the corner and so my mother wanted to help them out, but she also knew from an educational and beneficial standpoint of learning your culture on top of being that I was going to go to college that the tribe would be able to help me kind
Yeah,
of
absolutely.
supplement some of that resource to my education. All of those things were kind of like check the boxes for my
Right.
mom to be like, okay, let's do this and do it now. So
Yeah.
you know, in particular, like I love those stories because yes, Arizona is a very much a melting pot of
Yeah.
diversity,
Yeah.
and that really does show with the stories that come out of who comes here and why. And so that's really great that you had that opportunity to,
Mhm.
kind of like you said, fresh start is always kind of a nice ring to it, and it has a good feeling. Your daughter must be like really kind of that kind of like I grew up here and now I get to go back to Syracuse and you get to tell her those stories and how or New York or Massachusetts and all of that and you get to
Yeah.
you show her those places that you kind of let go of or come moved away
Yeah.
from and share those moments with her. That must be a lot of fun too.
It is, yes. Yeah, I have, my daughter's 25 now.
Wow.
My son is 21, and so, yeah, we take them, both back to see our families and, to stay connected. That's when I talk about my passions and, um,
Yeah.
quality family and friend time is the number one passion I have. So for
Yeah.
my kids to grow up and still know their cousins and their aunts and everyone that's still back there. And so that means a lot. And to show them our traditions and what we did, where we went to high school and our
Yeah.
favorite pizza spot. And I mean, yeah.
Nice.
And so when
Yeah.
we go back all the time for Fenway and the Red Sox and the
That's good.
Patriots. And yeah, so we do all of our sporting events back there. And
That's awesome. That's a good
yeah,
feeling to share with them. In
yeah,
particular, I have a 3-year-old. My son is just he's going to be 4 in January, and it's always fun to kind of see his joy when he sees us kind of like, oh, this is mom's favorite baseball team because she grew up here and all of those different things, and now he's really like a fan of those teams as well, and
yes.
they really just pick up that kind of where you left off and you get to
Mhm.
share that enjoyment with them. And I'm slowly starting to get it more and more as a parent to like, have him a part of those traditions that we had when we were kids. So it's a lot of
Yes,
fun. You,
definitely.
you brought up your uncle, and I would like to ask really quickly, did he help you ever after college? Or anything that you can kind of share with us or those moments of like his profession now becoming your profession, and was there ever a crossover moment for you and your uncle because he did kind of introduce that idea of civil engineer, mathematics, all of these loves of math and science and things like that. Was there ever a moment where he's like, oh wow, you're actually doing it?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. So he was my uncle by marriage.
Okay.
So shortly after college, he and my aunt got divorced, and it
Okay.
wasn't a very friendly divorce. And
Got
so,
it.
ironically enough, 2 years ago this October, their daughter, my cousin, got married. And so again, my kids and I went back for the wedding in Boston, just outside of Boston, actually. And it was our first time connecting in
Oh
20 plus years, and so it was a lot of fun to meet him and or to see
yeah.
him again and to, share with, his new significant other, just the history and how I ended up where I was at the time. I was actually running for office for the CAP, and he's very political. I would say that he not only was he a civil engineer, but I mentioned he was on Planning and Zoning Commission,
Yeah.
and he really taught me how important it was to not just, do the engineering, but to serve. And so that part of my path has been more fulfilling than anything, serving on boards and commissions and
Mhm.
my community and for my city. But and so it was fun to share those experiences with him and to be able to just thank him for encouraging me. I'm
Absolutely.
very fortunate when I look back at other people, not that they're stuck in their careers, but maybe they didn't choose what they
Yeah.
passionate about, and now
Yeah.
it just, makes sense to keep going. I love what I do, and so, yeah, so it was fun to share some of those stories with him.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I'll give you this, that it is really cool when you have someone who kind of introduce like that idea of like they pass it down to you, or like they give you a chance to like learn from them and apprentice and things like
Yeah,
that. And so
yeah,
when you say, when you're able to like give them that moment of like, thank you, you gave me this life that I now live. It is so beautiful. I always think
yeah,
it's kind of a passing of the torch moment, and it's
yeah,
really cool that you got to do that at a very family function like that. That's really fun.
right? Yeah, it was
Yeah.
fun. Yeah,
I'll kind of like say this as like where I grew up. There was a lot of like the idea of storytelling, also these other idea of farming and land development through farming and things like that, and other things that we do with the land on our reservation that I didn't know until I actually moved and started participating in those traditions. And then when I went to college, I was gonna go for architecture, and then didn't had 0 idea what landscape architecture was. And it wasn't until I got there when someone introduced this idea of landscape architecture where I was like, "Oh, it's everything that I like about architecture, but in land form that I already know and have an appreciation of and a passion for." Now
mhm,
that's what I'm gonna switch to and start doing. And I was like, it was a light bulb moment of like, yeah, that's what I want to do.
that's what I
That's
want to hear.
yeah. And so for me, it was like, yeah, I wasn't on the correct trajectory, but and then got pushed into the right path and told that this is where I needed to be. So I definitely have that kind of different story, but also in a similar idea of like someone showed me something that I had an appreciation for, and my grandfather, and he's no longer with us, but he saw me graduate, and he was very proud of me for doing the switch from architecture to landscape architecture, and he knew that
That's
that
awesome.
was important to me. So
Mhm.
I will now kind of transition into the early stages of your career and kind of like what did you see in the city of Phoenix at large? I mean, you can see right here. I have a very
Yeah.
large this was actually a gift from my father. He likes to go to auctions, and in one of the boxes that he got, it was all of these topography photos from I think it was from a land developer or something. I don't know, but it was just these
Huh.
beautiful aerial shots that were done in the 1980s. And so
Oh,
I think
wow.
this is 1985, 6, somewhere around there. And so that was, I was like, you can start to see like there's parts of the outer ridges that were not developed and were farmland. And so now they are developed. I've slowly started to realize how much development happened between
Oh,
80s, 90s, 2000s, the aughts, and then now today. So I would love to kind of peel back and go back a little bit, to when you were first starting out of like, what was that first step into your career? What did you see? What was like the what was your eye set on? That sort of stuff.
yeah. So when I graduated, it was a shock, obviously. Like I said, I attempted to go back east actually.
Okay.
And a female engineer, it wasn't even thought of as much as here. It was more welcoming here for sure, still a
Yeah.
challenge. And so I was still trying to figure out what my path was going to be.
Mhm.
Um, I didn't know. I loved engineering, but I liked people and I liked being out and talking to people. I
Yeah.
got very lucky that my boss brought me to a lot of meetings and felt that was the best way for me to learn so I
Mhm.
could see him present
Yeah.
uh, and and just started to naturally follow my path of passion which was being in the meetings, negotiating, assembling a deal. Um,
Yeah.
the neighborhood meetings, usually we would have a zoning attorney, and there was one time that something happened and it was for a client, and I ended up having to take the lead for a little bit, and
Okay.
I really enjoyed it. As difficult as it was, because the neighbors are always typically very upset and very emotional.
Mm.
Change is hard. Some developers have not given us the best name, and so there's that skepticism of, you're out to do something terrible, and
Yeah.
like, no, actually, I'm doing exactly what we did for you 5 years ago, and that's now your home. And so it's
Mm.
just smart growth. I'm a proponent of smart growth. So just to really sit down and listen,
Mhm.
and once I started that path and was fortunate again at CMX that they allowed me to do that, I really started to learn that that was where my passion was. For
Mhm.
me, I felt the engineering was pretty simple. It
Yeah.
was, the same requirements almost in every municipality. It was just regurgitating. So I was very fortunate that I had a good team that I was overseeing, and they did great work and put the
Yeah.
plans together. But I could be out negotiating with the city and debating with Andy Granger at the city of Phoenix that, at the time when he was still there, and
Yeah.
what first flush should be and why we should have a first flush basin, and just kind of challenges to help reduce in some of the construction costs and to allow us to increase yield. And I love all of that
Mm.
challenge. And so
Yeah.
that's kind of it. Just happened from there. They
Yeah.
afforded me that opportunity, and I kept going with it.
That's awesome though. That and I think that comes with, you start to stay at a career path, that a place where you can kind of develop your skills and kind of grow with the company. And you can also start to develop your skill set and where you want to be most proficient at and what you're passionate about. So
Yes.
that is really the great opportunities that come from having those kind of businesses that you're a part of. And I find it
Yes, absolutely.
I find it very interesting that you kind of got the opportunity to really hone in on that area of like being a part of the people, and realizing that at an early start of your career of like, I like talking to people, I like being interactive with them, and things like that. So I particularly find myself like, I I still like question some of the where I want to specialize in, or where I want to kind of hone my most skills at. But I've slowly started to dwindle down the options of like where I want to be most proficient at. So it is kind of that really fun aspect of like, you're in your youth, and you really kind of want to try everything. And now,
Everything. Yeah.
yeah, so it's really cool. And you must have seen a lot to kind of in that early start of like, before the recession happened, of like, look at all these opportunities come about from the city, and look at all
Mm.
these opportunities that come through the land part of like, we can develop here, we can go here and there. um I particularly am interested in kind of like those early beginnings of like, when you started to realize that, what were the first inklings of that recession coming about? Like, do you remember the chaos or I guess the start of the chaos, and what did it feel like going through that? I mean, there was some hard decisions that had to
Oh,
be
yeah.
made for sure. But I'm always interested because that is kind of a pivotal moment for Phoenix in particular. I mean, you could see basically at one moment, I mean, just a stoppage of,
Yes.
buildings
Tough.
being like literally like, whole tract homes of like, just no one living in them, half built, whatever it may be. It just was a weird
Yeah.
pivotal
It was.
point.
Yeah, so I would say that I was still pretty young in my career. I was about 10 years in.
Yeah.
And so I almost thought it was going to be like 2001 when September 11th happened and development kind of ceased for a minute, just to see what was going to happen because of
Mhm.
the trade centers and all of that. And so I thought maybe I was naive. I thought the recession would be maybe a blimp like that.
Hmm.
And then, like to your point, hard decisions had to be made. And um, back before the recession, I still am very driven, but I was so driven. I was working 70, 80 hours a week. I was just giving it my all.
Yeah.
I would get in trouble, not in trouble, but in my review, the criticism I got was that I worked too hard. I didn't get up and socialize. I didn't interact with my team. And I would start putting it on my calendar because I was so task oriented to get up and interact. And it used to drive me crazy, actually. I thought,
Yeah.
we're all getting paid to do a job. I don't need to be friendly. Well, then I started liking it. And so I started to really get to know all of our team. I got to know their spouses and their kids, and we did interactive things together.
Yeah.
Then the recession comes and emotion, it was all involved. I never even thought about myself or my family. I knew we would be fine. I always have a very positive attitude.
Hmm.
I always knew that we had family back in Maine. If we had to, would put whatever we could in a car and we'd head back home and we wouldn't be homeless. I knew that.
Yeah.
So I just knew that God had a plan and whatever that was, we'd figure it out.
Hmm.
Oh, but gosh, it weighed on me to have to go in and lay people off. I
Yeah.
was really bad at it. I would apologize and my boss would be in there first to teach because there were going to be a lot of these and he needed me to do some of my own and don't say you're sorry. I'm like, but I am sorry. Don't cry. I would cry. I know that's a girl thing, but I knew these people and I knew that, his wife was
Yeah.
pregnant and they needed the insurance
Yeah.
and then I was hustling to go find more work, but there wasn't more work. And so it was, how do we keep taking this bucket and keeping it full, but not having enough money to keep it going? And yeah, it was a huge relief to me, actually, the day that they called. And I remember being very upset. Ron Hilgart called me to let me know that I was getting laid off. My
Hmm.
daughter had an ear infection, so I
Oh,
was out bringing her to
yeah.
the pediatrician. He didn't want to have me hear it through the grapevine because it was a board decision that some of the partners were going to have to get cut. And
Yeah.
I remember him calling me and saying, and I was like, you know what? To your point, there are so many hard decisions we've had to make. The only person left that was working for me was Ron Hilgart's son, Zach Hilgart. And I'm like, you can't possibly be calling me to tell me to let your son go. And
Yes.
he said, no, actually, I'm calling to say that.
Oh.
And I was so relieved. I didn't have to tell anybody else but my husband that I didn't have to lay anybody off. I slept so well that night
Oh,
because I
wow.
knew
Yeah.
we would be fine. I knew I did the very best I could, and that what was going to happen was going to happen, and that nothing I could do anymore was going to affect anybody else's life. And
Yeah.
so then it was just sitting back and watching. And gosh, I thought I was so well balanced and I wasn't. I mean, I was working, like I said, 70 and 80 hours a week. My daughter was in sometimes laying on the play mat in my office on a
Mhm.
Saturday, just so I could get some work done. And I started reflecting on that and said, oh my gosh, what am I doing? Like, I'm missing my kids growing up. Yes, I was at everything, but I was on my BlackBerry. I was back when we had the Blackberries and I was
Yeah.
working the whole time and I looked up and like, good job, you got a goal. And then I was back to my phone again. And yeah, so that obviously was a huge impact, but that's where my nonprofit work started.
Yeah.
I didn't
That's
have
great.
work to do, and so I started helping with Relay for Life with American Cancer Society. I just started really getting involved because
Yeah.
what else was I going to do?
Yeah.
And so I started volunteering at my kids' school, helping them with math and science tutoring. Um,
Oh.
yeah, and so it really opened my eyes. Uh,
Yeah.
I will say that was the start of my divorce. Everybody handles things different. And
Yeah.
for me, I was like, we're still all together, we're all family. In his mind, we were failing. So we definitely started to go opposite ways and we
Hmm.
hung on as long as we could. But yeah, the recession was extremely impactful to us, obviously, as many
Yeah.
people in the Valley.
Yeah. Um, can I ask when that first moment of like the nonprofit work, like after that came about, what was your first step back into like work life?
Yeah, it was about 6, maybe 9 months after I had been laid off, and my friends had started a new engineering firm, Vantage Resources. And they called and asked if I wanted to come work with them, and I said,
Yeah.
"No, I'm no, I'm not working with anybody. I'm gonna keep doing some volunteer work."
Yeah.
That, as you can imagine, really upset my husband, but, the money wasn't there. It wasn't gonna be as profitable anyway, and I felt like this was a time to really reconnect, and,
Good for you. Good for you to stand on those kind of that new transition in your life where
yeah,
I mean, in all honesty, as another parent, and I'll be honest, the pandemic was that way for me,
yeah,
having to transition because we had just found out that she was pregnant, and
uh,
so I had to make a kind of critical. I was at a smaller firm, and so I was like, what are we gonna do? Like,
yep,
how do we,
right,
take care of each other and keep
of course,
working and these things. And so, I took it upon myself, like, I think I can do this on my own, like, or I think I can handle this kind of stuff where I can work from home, and let me figure it out and let me be the person who does this. And so I luckily have found my EPS job, and they
mhm,
allowed me to work from home and be more. I knew if I stayed at that other place, I probably wouldn't have spent as much time as I did with my son. And now I feel so thankful looking back at it that I stood on the morality of, like, I want to be a present father, and I want to. My father was as present as he could be, and he wasn't as well educated from not graduating college, but just being a high school graduate. He did what he could with the time that he had, and he did everything he possibly could to be at those games, be home as much as he could be.
mhm,
And I was so thankful as a youngster to have that and know that my father was proud of me and he enjoyed going to those things. He was always the loudest one there. And so I wanted that for my son, and so now I look back on it, it's like I'm very thankful to stand on those morals of, like, I
yeah,
went into my interview of, like, "Look, I'm gonna be a father, but I really wanna be home with him, and I only wanna take this job if knowing that I can do the things I can for you guys, but also be a present parent at home and take the heavy load
yes,
of being with him and being his primary caregiver and things like that." And so I think that's what they said yes to, is like, look
right,
at, like, this is someone that we can develop and take pride in, and know that he will do good things, just from the standpoint of he has this moral compass of, like, wanting to
yes.
do the best for his family. So
Yeah, I think that's so important. And similar for me about that 6 to 9 month mark in Vantage, my friends came and finally said, you can still stay at home. You can, minimal hours. We just need you to help us get some of this public work back because
yeah,
you were the public work person at CMX with some of these contracts. I'm
yeah.
like, fine, I'll come help you. I'm not going to work
Pull
on
my
it.
arm.
Yeah, I'm like, I'll help you get the projects. You'll do the work, but
Mhm.
I'll help, manage if you want.
Yeah.
And they knew me well enough. That lasted for like 4 to 6 months, and before you knew it, I was full-time again. I was opening a West Valley office again in
Mhm.
Peoria for them. Yeah, and so it just from there went on, and it was getting some of our old CMX work back, and it was just
Yeah.
recovering from as things started to slowly pick up, and, that's when I started doing some pro bono work for churches.
Nice.
They had issues and didn't know how to get their drainage to work or whatever it was.
Mhm.
They had a permit issue, and I'm like, "I can help with that,"
Yeah,
and so that I continue to do that to this day, actually, so
that's wonderful.
yeah, it really helped me to find, I feel, a true balance.
For sure. I think that as you find yourself more and more in your positions of, like, transition of life and into other opportunities, you start to really uh, become the true person that you want to be, and you look
Yeah,
and you start
yeah,
to develop those things that you really want and find most enjoyable in your life. And I think from from a standpoint of someone who is still working through some of those early issues, or whatever you want to
yeah,
call them, those crux of life, I think that it's a wonderful to meet you, to, like, kind of help me understand that you can do those things that you're passionate about and find time to make them work. So I'm very excited to go now into where you're at today with Zen investing and diversified future. I'd love to just kind of ask some of those services that you provide to help us kind of see what you guys really do behind the scenes, but also to ask, what was it like to kind of become this like managing partner and like take the to role from, you know, being the worker bee to being now the boss bee, and being that person who now has this kind of hat that's like, come to me, I will, dull out the workload.
Yeah, so I kind of did that a lot at CMX and then later at Vantage and Bowman. And then I went on to be at Empire in 2015 as a developer and became president of that company. So that transition was I found and my mantra in life has always been positive, persistent progression.
Mhm.
And you can do that much better with a team, right?
Yeah.
What I can do on my own is nothing compared to what I can do with the whole team.
Yeah.
And so it just slowly started building. And probably I credit that back to CMX where they would always get jobs and they would talk a great game in the meetings and then leave and say, yep, we can do that. And we'd walk out and I'm like, how are we going to do that? And they're like, we have no idea, but we're going to go figure it out. And I'm like, okay, well, I believed you. They believe you. That got instilled in me. And so I got to Empire and Richard Felker told us, this is what I want to get done. And I thought, okay, we'll go figure it out. And
Yeah.
then um, his years were um, much older than mine, so
Mm.
I knew that there would become a time when he wouldn't be in the business anymore, and I needed to start thinking about that transition.
Yeah.
It had been 8 years there, and so that's when I said, I really love what I do, and I love to pick who I do this for, and
Yeah.
that's how Diversified Future came about. And ironically enough, I have a strong Christian faith, and so
Okay.
I knew I wanted diversified future. I had worked on it. It was coming. I literally woke up one morning and said, you know what, today's the day. I wasn't ready at all. I didn't have any work lined up. I didn't have anything in place.
Mhm.
I just knew that I was being called to leave Empire that day and went in and gave my notice. And a month later, I was done.
Yeah.
And, God has a plan. In the middle of that month, I wasn't even allowed to announce that I was leaving. We had agreed that
Mhm.
he wasn't ready for it to be announced. And a friend, a zoning attorney, asked if I would go to lunch with this guy in town from California out of Silicon Valley trying to start a land development company. And he just wanted to kind of get some feedback on what I would give him for words of advice. And I said, sure. I'll go
Okay.
to lunch and talk to him. And I made it clear I couldn't tell him I was leaving Empire because I had, I was under an NDA, but I said, here's what you do, here's who you hire, here's the team I would put together. And we laid it all out.
Mhm.
And he called me after that meeting and said, I want to hire you. And I said, oh, I already have a job. Um, and sure enough, I mean, within a couple weeks, I was done at Empire. And within about a couple weeks, I had follow-up conversations with Bala, and he's our founding manager. And I agreed to come on as a consultant for a while and just help get things going. And then that grew into now being managing partner. And just,
Yeah.
I think if you're authentic and do things out of kindness
Yeah.
with no expectation and what's supposed to happen happens. And
Absolutely.
yeah, so that's kind of where we transition to. So
That's awesome. I really do find that such a beautiful story because I think it does kind of relate back to what you say. It's like you do the kindness out of your heart, like you do the things that you feel, or like, I mean, you went in was like the expectation, like you said, you told him like, I have a job, but
yep.
here, I'll help you with this kind of stuff. Like, this is where you got to go. And I feel like those are the best moments of like life, of like, hey, someone saw something in me and wanted to take that opportunity to do that with me as well. So it's it's kind of cool when you kind of look back at it, of like this kind of developing snowball effect of like, CMX, coming to the valley, all that different things, and then that pivotal point of like change after the recession of like I want to nonprofit work and to be a part of something that has, like, for me, like, no financial backing really, but just want to help.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you go back into the work, and you still have those beliefs, and priorities, and life comes at you with this open opportunity, and it's really cool. And I really do appreciate you kind of sharing all of this with us to
Yeah.
kind of seek who you are, but also what is behind your business and what people can expect when working with you. So I think that's really a wonderful way to kind of just ask right now and go into kind of the final parts of my conversation with you of like goal setting and things like that for you personally or with the business as a whole of like, is there something that our listeners can help you with, or if there's just some big lofty goal that you have for the future, what that is.
Yeah. So, my biggest goal, I would say, is my new nonprofit, Passion to Powher.
Awesome.
From all of this discussion, you can now see where we came to this, I think, in that it was 2020, and one of my friends recommended, in all the transition that was happening in my life with the job and the divorce and just a lot of change,
Yeah.
to really find my true passions. And
Mhm.
she recommended that I read this book called Passion Test.
Okay.
And so I not only read the book, but I went away for the first time ever on a solo trip to California and found a beach, back to nature.
Nice.
That's what feeds my soul, is the ocean. And so I sat on that beach for a few days by myself, reading this book and doing all the exercises. And the gist of the book is you go through and you do these practice tests or what have you, and you start determining what your passions are. And they tell you right in the book, you think you know what your passions are, and by the end, they're different than what you thought by the
Yeah.
time you finish the book. And that's exactly what happened to me. You put your passions in order, then one through whatever you have, 20, 25, 15, everybody's different. And you pick your top five passions.
Mhm.
And when you pick your top five passions, there's goal setting and markers based on those passions so that there's measurables. Are you meeting those passions?
Nice.
And you write those five passions down, and I put them everywhere until I had them memorized, on my steering wheel, on my computer at work, on my mirror in the bathroom, in the
Yeah.
closet. And you recite them over and over and over until
Yeah.
every decision you make every day falls into one of those five buckets. And for me, I always would, still very calendar driven, but I would just say yes to everything. And I was like, how do I fit all this in? Now I only say yes to things that fall within that five passion.
Awesome.
And and from there, I knew that my biggest goal, I would say, and we have a lot of them, right? Watching my kids grow up and be successful, and having close family dynamics, and just having a fit, balanced life. I've transitioned my entire life in this journey. I got fit during all of this time. I wasn't at all, so I've lost about 150 pounds and got into shape. And
Congratulations, first off.
thank
Like,
you. Yeah. And it was all from that passion test of,
yeah.
I want to be here for my kids. If I'm not healthy, this is, yeah. And so once I did that, and again, I'm always about positive, persistent progression and impact. And how can you make the most impact? I can keep doing what I'm doing, and I will
Mhm.
continue.
Yeah.
But if I inspire, empower, and support other young ladies to find their true passions and help them to find their path, and to support them through that and empower them and let them know, not only do we have a female vice president, she's now running for office as president.
Yes.
And again, not to even get political, but there's a lot of women doing great things. And
It's
so
it's good standard to live by, or it's seek, just to understand that there's opportunities that you may not think are there.
opportunities. Yeah.
There's definitely, and I 100% agree and back you.
Yeah, thank you. And so I think it's sharing that story and empowering them, even if it's to be the best stay at home mom. I'm so thankful for all my friends that were stay-at-home moms, I would have been terrible. And so they gave me that opportunity to be the village to help raise my kids while I was working, and then in exchange gave back to them. And so to just teach these girls that and to give them the
Mhm.
exposure, we'll be having more, our first conference in October. We have
Oh, nice.
200 girls signed up, which was our
That's
limit. We have about 28 on the wait list right now. And just to
wow.
see this day coming together is just amazing. The speakers we have, the
Oh,
workshops they're doing,
yeah.
things. I mean, they'll walk away with a gift from us, a bracelet,
Mhm.
a sterling silver bracelet with Passion to Power engraved on the bracelet. They'll get the Passion Test book. We will guide them through the Passion Test. We'll
Nice.
have the FBI in to talk to them about human trafficking and awareness, but then also career paths at the FBI. We'll have a mindful intention workshop where they go out and learn some deep breathing techniques. They
Yeah.
understand, having that mindfulness that they can, anything they put their mind to.
Yeah.
There'll be some career path and um, exploration. Um, some dynamic speakers coming in from what I like to call the Arizona Big Sports Panel, all
Oh,
the females
wonderful.
that are,
Yeah.
running sporting industries here in Arizona. And so yeah, so it will be a really fun day. We'll continue with workshops in the spring, because if we get them all excited and then just let them go, they're not going to know what to do with it.
Yeah.
And so we'll continue. We'll have financial literacy workshops. We'll have uh,
Yeah.
health and well-being. We'll have a um, All Women in Politics Day, where they get to hear and introduce themselves to women in politics. Why are they in politics? What
Yeah.
drives some true fact checking? Get involved, register
Awesome.
to vote, but know who you're voting for, not because you're friends or because of the media or because of TikTok. Really learn and understand the topics and
Mhm.
and fact check,
The
some
policies, yeah.
policies, and so teaching them that in a workshop after the election. We don't want to get, like I
Yeah.
said,
Don't overwhelm them too much, too
yeah,
quick.
we will not. Yeah. Yeah. So that
Um,
I think is my real aha moment. And especially having my daughter,
mhm.
to just be able to say, whatever you want to do, that's what you can do. And
Yeah.
there isn't those ceilings anymore, and that will help them through those.
Yeah, absolutely. Just really quickly, is your daughter gonna be going with you to the
Yeah.
event? Oh,
Yeah.
awesome. That'll be
And so not
fun.
only is she going with me, a year ago, she came on as my personal assistant.
Ah,
And I've been mentoring her since last June. I'm hoping that she will become the director of Passion to Power, and that will be part of her future career path as well. And just
that's
watching
awesome.
her, in these meetings, and she doesn't really know yet. I mean, obviously, I've
Yeah,
had more years of experience, and so I have her come to all the meetings,
that's
and
wonderful.
yeah, and then just finding what she likes about it. She
Mm,
likes the engagement with the girls, and so letting her kind of take that lead, and um, yeah, so it's been fun watching her not only put this event together, but taking a real position in it as well.
that's I mean, to go I just wanna recap what we've just kinda gone through together, but also to my
Yeah.
listeners as well, just like the moment that the transition of life for you when 2008 rolled around and it was just like you have your like you said you had your daughter on her mat in your office, and now to have this opportunity to build a legacy of helping other girls and women to empower them, to give them guidance, to give them opportunity, and now to the biggest part, in your own child, to give them the opportunity to grow and lift themselves off from a really wonderful standpoint of community, culture, a business. This is the things that I want for my own son, for my own children,
Mhm.
if I ever have another one. That's I'll just say it's like I really he's understood what dad does, which is podcasting, and he's like, "Dad, go do podcast now?" And I'm like, "Yes, dad, we'll go do podcast today. Dad's working." And so that's the one thing I want to give him is the opportunity to know that you can do this and I think I will start something with him hopefully, because he's shown interest in wanting to talk with me
Yeah.
and then do a podcast himself, but we'll figure that out along the way. But it's like that sort of thing of like giving them the opportunity to do the thing that you love and are passionate about, and give them a jumping off point to help them really flourish, is again the idea of legacy. I just find it so beautiful that you had this with your daughter, and hopefully I'll be able to do this with my son as well. And it's just really great to, from a standpoint of parenthood, to really see and understand how everyone goes about it. But like again, this is for me a true gift to hear this story and to see where you're at, and to say like kudos and congratulations, and I wish you
Okay.
nothing but the best of luck. And
Thank you.
I know it'll be a lot of fun for you and the others at the event. And hopefully we can even help you further along. I'll let you in on some stuff that we can provide for you, and as well as for our business, to hopefully be able to shout it out a little bit louder, so that people for next year can sign up
Yeah.
and feel like they can be a part of this event, or want to be a part of this event. So that will conclude our conversation today. But I know that there's so much more left on the table. Hopefully, we can have you back in. I would love to introduce you to some other people as well. So typically, I like to, when I bring back guests, have them a part of a panel,
Oh,
and
yeah.
that'll be fun for me to kind of have you as part of this like really empowerment panel, like women empowerment, especially because we have some other previous guests that I think you'd find interesting and have a good time with. So that'll be for the future. So Shelby, the way that we end our conversations is I would love to give you the floor to kind of give everyone where they can find you online, any social media or anything else other than the event that you want to shout out. The floor is yours. Go ahead and promote. Do it.
Thank you. I don't really do a lot on social media other than my
That's
personal
fine.
page.
That's
Yep.
fine.
But yeah, Passion to Power is PASSION, POWHER at
Yes.
gmail.com. And just send us some information if you're interested in getting involved. We need volunteers and sponsorship still. And so trying to just wrap up on that end of things. And just looking forward to an exciting day out at the Peoria Sports Complex.
Yeah.
And I would love to be a part of that woman empowerment panel. And I
Yeah.
always love to meet new people. And yeah, so I look forward to that.
Awesome. I will definitely keep in contact with you, and we'll get everything sorted out. I will definitely let my wife know. She's very much she's in the similar boat where she's like she would love to meet you, and I think she would get a kick out of hearing this episode and understanding you as an individual. So I will end our conversation as we always do with our little outro. You can hear every episode of our podcast at findingarizonapodcast.com, all of our social media under Finding Arizona Podcast. And if you'd like to send us an email, findingarizonapodcast at gmail.com. Last but not least, every conversation ends with a kisses, hugs, and belly rubs to our four-legged friends, and we will see you next time. Bye, y'all.